Good morning. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please go back to the beginning. Watch the episode that talks all about me and my team, just so you know who I am. And hopefully you'll subscribe and hang out for a little bit. I have lots of different videos on this channel about the home buying and home selling process, including monthly market updates. Jen Blanchard, team leader of the Blanchard team. It's nice to meet you. Part 2, appraisals and assessments. In part 1, we talked about the definition of a bank appraisal, a tax assessment, and a Zestimate. So how do these values compare to your list price or your market value when you sell your property or when you buy a house? An appraisal is something that the bank needs to estimate the value of the property to ensure that they're not taking on too much debt. So if you're making an offer on a property and you're putting 20% down, the bank is going to loan you 80%. The bank wants to make sure that if you happen to default on that loan and you foreclose, the bank needs to ensure that they will be able to put that house back on the market and sell it. Therefore, they will only loan you 80% of what they perceive to be the property's value. Is that value the same as the list price? Not necessarily. Is your contract price the same as the list price? Not necessarily. So what we can do is look at the comparison of the appraised value to the contract price. We want those values to be the same. If they're not, we need to go back to the drawing board. The thing is, you don't have that appraisal until after the property is under contract. That appraisal is ordered as part of the buyer's mortgage process. My job as a listing agent is to help you determine the best list price for your property, which allows us to formulate a strategy to find a buyer. If we find a buyer with that strategy, the odds of the property appraising are very high. Tax assessment. How does that compare to the market value of a property? To that question, I must say it depends. And that's because every town defines tax assessment differently. Wait, no, they define it the same, but they calculate it and derive it differently. For instance, in Bernards Township, the tax assessor strives to assess the property at market value. They're not always exactly right. I think that their cycle is different than a sales cycle. So often they're calling me and asking me about values for houses that sold 6 months ago. So the timing is always a little bit off. They generally don't get it right either. We can estimate a little bit that the tax assessment in Bernards Township is within 6 or 10% of list price in either direction. Generally, we sell over tax assessment by about 6%. Zestimate. All I'm going to say about the Zestimate is it's very difficult to say how it relates to market value. As you listened in my last video, you know that the definition of market value is like a gazillion words. It's easy to define appraisal. It's easy to define tax assessment. Comes to Zestimate, it's a little more difficult to define. And even Zestimate says there is a margin of error. They provide a table of that, what those errors are based on the location. So it's kind of interesting. The reason that the Zestimate is important for a seller is that the buyers look at it. And there are some buyers who insist that they won't pay more than what the Zestimate is. So if the Zestimate is wrong, that buyer is just not going to be successful buying that property. So as a buyer, you need to make sure you're speaking to your real estate agent and understanding the value of the property that you're looking at. So there you have it. Hopefully now you understand the difference between the assessment and appraisal and market value. If not, give us a call. I'm more than happy to explain it again. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. Thanks so much for spending these minutes with me.